Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, and volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positivity here on the show, and with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a living legend, worked for so many different promotions, has his own wrestling school. He's one half of one of the greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling. WWE Hall of Famer, class of 2017, the one, the only Ricky Morton is with us here. Welcome, Ricky, to Wrestling with Heart.
Man, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show, Wrestling with Heart with Stanley Carr.
Yes.
And I really appreciate you having me. And I really appreciate you here, what we're going to talk about, especially my love for the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we just talked off air. You're actually from Antioch, not far away from Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's considered Nashville. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just South Nashville is all it is. I tell everybody I'm from L.A., Lower Antioch. So,
Well, tell me about your childhood. What was it like?
well, my childhood was like anybody else. Our world was different at that time. My dad, which he was referee for Memphis, but my dad was a serviceman, and he, in those days, he had a strong arm. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's what's missing in our world today, because if we mess, I had 4 brothers, and we all monitored each other, because when one of us got an ass whooping, everybody got an ass whooping. So that's just the way it was. And it wasn't, it go cut me a switch. He got a cane pole in his hand already. So that's the way it was growing up. But it's the way that made me what I am today. My dad, like I said earlier, was a professional referee. And this is what we had to do. It was what we all had to do. Me, my brothers and I. My dad pulled the wrestling ring for Nick Goulas before he went to work for Jerry Jarrett. And in territory days, you wrestle every night. There's not a day off. So unless you had your big shows, like all the spot shows that I used to call, my dad would pull the ring. We have to go help put the ring up. So I grew up in the wrestling business. Helping him every day. And plus, we lived in the country. We had to do a lot of work around there too.
So growing up, you were around this exciting sport as professional wrestling is, and the world of entertainment. What can you tell me about, like, the first exposure you got to going to matches with your dad?
Well, growing up into the business and going to the matches with my dad, back then wrestling was nothing like it is now. I really didn't want to get into the wrestling business, because I understood, and my daddy let me understand about the business and how it worked. Unless you were the booker or unless you were the promoter, you had no chance in hell ever making it in business. And I can remember back then, they had a great baby face out of Nashville named Lynn Rossi,
Mm-hmm.
in which he was great. He looked the part of being a professional wrestler. But then you go back, and I remember the heels, they were all 350 pounds, out of shape, but they could wrestle. You knew how to work back then. It was cool. It was sort of easy. And then when I got older and I played football at Antioch High School, and I was in the business, it was never something that I really wanted to do. But what an education I got. I finally got to, when my dad started to work at Memphis, he didn't pull the ring no more. So we would no longer go with him. But this is at the time you could see the business changing. It was going from these armory shows to the Coliseums, in big business, and that's what's happening right there.
Yeah. On a side note, I actually was good friends with Len Rossi before he passed. He had owned a
Yes.
health food store in the greater Nashville area
Yeah,
in
down
Brentwood.
in Brentwood.
Yes. Very nice guy. Used to talk all the time about his career and his days. It really was a really great babyface.
Oh, yes. And, Lynn, since we're sitting there talking about it, in those days, he had a big, and I have this on tape somewhere, and it's the greatest how people could work back then. See, Lynn Rossi had that good body on him, but he was a baby face, and he knew how to sell. And my dad was referee, and at that time, Lynn Rossi had the biggest feud you could ever imagine with Tojo Yamamoto. Mm-hmm. This is great things because this is how things work in our business. You had the Russians at the time when we was having trouble with the Russians, and you had the Germans from the World War II, and then you had Tojo from World War II. It's just crazy stuff. But I wanted to tell you, and this is how our business was back then. They had a big feud going. And Tojo, he's in his corner and he's standing there with his arms down, and Lynn's over here. But every time my dad would turn his back, he would act like he was going into his tights. Oh, the crowd would lose their mind. My dad turned around and he'd stand up straight again. Now, this went on for 20 minutes. And then when he finally pulled the thing out of his tights during the heat, on the comeback when in Rossi, the whole East section came in the rink. I'm not kidding you, but it was crazy stuff.
Yeah, you couldn't get away with that stuff today. It's different times and how society has changed over the course of the decades. And so back then, a lot of people really took professional wrestling seriously. Like, it was nuts.
Hey, buddy, yes, all the way up until I guess 87. 88. Even then, they believed in professional wrestling. You can't imagine how many matches I've been in where the fans hit the ring. But then when he got corporate business and these guys took over WCW, and then, which I'm not knocking none of them, the business changed. See, I'm one of the few people that stood up for the boys in our business. This is where I had all my trouble at, because you take our business from drawing 200 people, to going to the superplexes or going to the Superdome, and then your pay don't change. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that. A lot of people think, oh, Ricky Morton. My biggest year in the wrestling business was 1985, and I made $125,000.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I still had to pay for everything out of my money. You didn't have no travel agency sending you airplane tickets and telling you where to go. You didn't have a hotel waiting on you when you got there. You had to do it all yourself. And it was a long, hard work. But don't get me wrong, I don't have any regrets, because that was the way it was. We had to start going. But now what I'm getting back to 87, 88, is the whole system change. You can look, some of these guys made what, 10, $11 million, and just right now, just going to the NXT, these guys get $75,000 a year to train to wrestle. And then when you get on the roster for WWE, that's $300,000 a year. Now, but see, went to WCW. WCW was a great thing, but man, these guys paid themselves so much money that broke the company. So it just, really, now that left a bad taste in my mouth about that. But I'm glad for the boys now. Then these guys ought to be, and I know Vince McMahon has a lot of heat right now, but let me tell you, Vince McMahon paid his boys. He paid you for working for him, and that's what I always liked about Vince.
What was the moment for you where you said, you know, I want to be a wrestler? You're not just be in the business, but I want to do it for a living.
Well, I always had it in the back of my mind. Then when I got out of high school, you know, there wasn't too much to pick from. I mean, you can have a 7 to 3 job, working all day long, and at the end of the week, you still on. You know, and it was because you know a lot of things were a lot cheaper back then. You know, I mean, if you worked 40 hours a week, you brought home $180. And but then I'll tell you what really got me, and I still knew a little bit. I went to Memphis. My dad asked me one day. He said, "Won't you ride down to Memphis with me today and go to the show?" And I said, "Okay." I went with him, and I hadn't been around in a while, and I didn't watch wrestling on Saturdays. And dude, I went to the Memphis Coliseum on a Monday night, and I thought I was at the Rolling Stones concert, buddy. I have never seen so many people. I mean, the Mid-South Coliseum completely sold out. People there, that, you know, the action and dude, when you're back there in the back, you're watching this, and which I knew a little bit about wrestling. I worked out with my dad, and I knew this, and when I seen that, God, I was hooked. I was hooked to the gore. So I went back and I didn't go to Memphis. Now I worked for Nick Goulas out of Nashville. You know, fairgrounds every Wednesday night, Huntsville, Alabama, every Friday night, Birmingham every Monday night, and you know, in Nashville wrestling's on Wednesday night. I think that's what I said earlier. But then you had spot shows that you did. But I did that to get myself ready to go to Memphis, and because I knew that was my goal at that time, is to go to Memphis wrestling, and I couldn't because it was. Then I started watching it on TV every Saturday, and I said, "Where in the hell have I been?" You know, I'm sitting here. I'm 20 years old. I want to do this, but what an education I did get wrestling for Nick. But then when I went to Memphis, and God, it was cool. You know, I know I'm going from limb to limb, but the same thing happened. I'm wrestling for Nick, and my dad asked me, he said, "Won't you go to Evansville with me tonight?" Because I was off on a Wednesday. I wasn't booked in Nashville, especially your hometown. So I got in the car and go with him. And this is a rule I tell everybody. If you're going to wrestling, take your wrestling bag. All right. Maybe. And it was there. I was lucky that time. I went to Evansville, Indiana, and somebody didn't show up. Somebody's car broke down, or they had I can't remember really what it was. And Evansville was the same way. So War Memorial Building in Evansville, great big building, old building, you know, and I love going there because I'm a freak about old history buildings. And if you've ever seen this building, you know what I'm talking about. So I got there, and just so happened somebody didn't show up. And my dad told Jerry Jarrett, "Won't you let my son wrestle?" And you know, at first he was kind of hesitated, you know, because he didn't know. And so he told me, and he's right there in front of me, Jerry Jarrett, and I'm wrestling a guy named Ken Wayne. He was well known as, you know, in Memphis, him and Danny Davis. So Jerry Jarrett told my dad, they said, "All right, I want you to go out and do a 15-minute time limit." And he looked at my dad and he says, "If the match sucks, Kitty, you pinned Ricky. And I'm not lying, but we went out there and we didn't call stuff in the back. You back then you just went to the ring and me and him just clicked. But we went out there and we had these people and it was great. And when I came back through the curtain, Jerry Jarrett was standing there and he goes, I know you wrestle for Nick, but I want you to be at Memphis TV Saturday. And that was the start of me really getting in the business.
You had mentioned the Rolling Stones comparison earlier. There's nothing like hearing the roar of the crowd and being in front of 80,000 people a night at an arena, at a huge facility, a venue, where you're just in front of a lot of people. I mean, there's nothing like it in the world. It's an adrenaline rush. It really is.
Oh, buddy, there's nothing I can match it to.
Yeah.
There's nothing, especially when we went, started being, but man, that professional wrestler by the name of Sonny King passed away. Mm-hmm. And Sonny was my first tag team partner. He's the one that really educated me about the business. But my dad, I rode with my dad every day. And my dad would drill this into my head, even though he was a referee, but he knew exactly what happening is going on. And then, and especially in the earlier days when the kids first breaking into business, my dad would be in the ring calling the match for him. He called the stuff for him to go because they didn't know, but that was the ultimate. In the night, in the late 70s and the early 80s, Memphis Wrestling was the biggest territory wrestling of all, except for, Vince McMahon that ran New York, where with your city, hell, you can run there every night in part of the city and never be in the same place. So it just lets you know how important it was. And this is how it worked back then, because, Jerry Lawler was a babyface. Bill Dundee was a babyface. In the summertime, it was great back then. You had your territories, the summer times when you drew all your money, when the kids are out of school and you go back. But now times has changed. In the wintertime, it was up, but up north in Canada, wintertime was great. So you people from Canada would come down for the summer, and like Joe LeDuc and all these guys to wrestle. That's where all your big heels come in. That's the reason it's so good. But then they'd go back to Canada in the winter, because up north in the winter was their good time of the year, because nobody snowed in. It was really freaky, I think. But now it's all different right now.
And so many people came out of Memphis too that became huge stars. You got yourself, you've got Lawler.
Where you want to start? Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage,
Mm-hmm.
Dutch Mantel. This where you want to really start? The Honky Tonk Man. That's Jerry Lawler's cousin, and it was unbelievable.
And it was just the legacy that Memphis Wrestling, still has carried on today. It's just remarkable because people still look back to all these old matches involving you and your tag team partner, and the stuff with Lawler and Dundee. The whole hardcore stuff really kind of originated with the Memphis stuff, the stuff that later was popularized in the 90s with ECW and later Japan. And
I don't know if you know this or not, Randy Savage and I was the first ones that would break a table. Mm-hmm. Was the first ones to ever go through a table and ever do it. And then the first time it was Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee against the Blonde Bombers. They did the Tupelo concession stand fight. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't as hardcore, because this is what I'm doing about myself and Eddie Gilbert wrestled Onita and Fuji. They was managed by Tojo. And when we did the Tupelo concession stand, we really made it hardcore. And a matter of fact, that's the reason Onita took it back to FMW in Japan for hardcore because of Tupelo, Mississippi, when we had a concession stand fight.
Yeah, it's just so cool to watch that back and seeing all the chaos that ensued, and seeing,
Yeah.
two guys just battling it out like outside of the ring. It was just unheard of back in those days, and to see the legacy that it's just left is
Oh, yes,
unbelievable.
it sure is.
Yeah.
And what, like I told you just earlier before we even started this interview, my love for this business. And I do. I mean, I'm just sometimes it's tired. You know what? The wrestling, and this is the reason a lot of people don't make it in this business. See, the wrestling is the greatest thing in the world, but the traveling, that's what, see, I tell my son, Kerry, says, we really get paid for traveling. We don't get paid for wrestling because it's just, especially when you work in, you're doing it. And some of you guys understand out there to do an NWA tape. And I mean, you fly in that morning, and it's the early flight in case something happens. And then you go straight to the building. Well, you're at the building there all day up to the show time. Then you get ready and you wrestle. And then you don't get out of the building until 11:30 or 12. Because a lot of times, you're doing a lot of tapings and you're doing this. And then you get to your hotel room at 1:00 and your flight leaves at 5 in the morning. See, a lot of people couldn't do that. They just lose their mind and freaky. But if you want it bad enough, you adjust yourself. It's like I, tell them, it's business. This is the part I'm saying. This business is not easy. That's
No.
the traveling. The shows are great, but the traveling's hell.
You really have to be committed to doing it and putting the effort in, the work in to make it. And this isn't just about wrestling, it's anything in life, singing or acting. This is really, it's a grind, and you have to get out there. I've heard stories about John Cena, him being the first one to show up and the last one to leave. He put in the work. And there's others that have definitely done the same thing as well.
Yes, and that's what I try to put in to tell my son. You always got to do that. It's in wrestling, and this, I wouldn't let him really do nothing until he graduated college because I wasn't able to get an education. But see, learning everything in our business, not just the wrestling, commentating in the back, putting shows together, being a writer, all these jobs are well paid jobs, and they're all really stressful as hell. But that's what you got to do. You put your work into it. Look at these guys, especially like John Cena. They're multi-millionaires. It is no joke to it. And then I got him in school and acting and all this stuff. This is for later on in life, hopefully. And I would say, you see, I grew up in a business, and Kerry grew up in a business with me. I remember I was wrestling Bobby Fulton over to Gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Kerry would get in the ring all the time. He, before the matches, work with Chase Owens and just unbelievable. I just sat back and watch him. But I just got through wrestling Bobby Fulton. I beat him. And I get back in the dressing room, and I can hear the people outside. Whoa, whoa. I said, what the heck's going on? And I walked out there, and now Bobby Fulton's done got my Kerry in the ring. Kerry ain't 8 or 9 years old. And they're doing some crazy stuff out there. And I see that's what's great, his love for the business. And it just didn't take him overnight. See, and I hate for somebody to say, well, you're Ricky Morton's son. Well, when you're Ricky Morton's son, it's twice as hard for you because the people are waiting for better expectations than what you do have. You have to carry that along with you. So I just want to let people out there know that he has to work twice as hard
Exactly
to do what he does.
I'd imagine it's hard being a second generation star because it's pressure and there's big shoes to fill because that's a legacy that you're leaving behind.
Oh yes, yeah, but see, I don't want him to fill my shoes. I want him to make his own. Don't walk in my footsteps, brother. Go make your own. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And that's what he did. He's doing that. He's,
Yeah.
absolutely great. He just graduated college. He was a cheerleader at King College, and they won the national championship his junior year. Now I have a WWE Hall of Fame ring. I haven't got it done right now because I'm at the house. But he has a national championship ring. You want to see the difference? It's that big round and diamonds and rubies and all
All
that other stuff.
sparkly, yes.
I got you,
Beautiful.
bud.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how the Rock and Roll Express came together. Tell me about how you got partnered up with Robert Gibson.
Oh, well, first of all, this is what I want to explain to everybody out there. This is when my dad comes in. And I said this earlier. My dad told me, he said, listen, Rick, because back then you didn't have, you had territories. He said, listen to me. As being a single, you're never going to get over in this business being by yourself because that's the booker or that's the owner. They're going to push themselves. He said, but the business always needs a semi-main event. And check it out, it's tag team wrestling. And I went, oh, I never thought of that. You see what I'm saying now?
Mm-hmm.
That's when, but he told me this back. That's when I teamed up with Sonny King before then, learning. And then I teamed up with Eddie Gilbert. Me and him went out to Oklahoma to work for Leroy McGurk, learning. Then I came back to Memphis, and this is a great, and everybody out there in this wrestling business, you go back and say, oh, so-and-so is the greatest baby face. So-and-so is the greatest baby face. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you, a guy named Ken Lucas. Look him up. Ken Lucas, he was the greatest baby face I ever seen. And Ken was smart too, because he was always a tag team wrestler. You're never going to get over the booker, and you're never going to get over the owner. You hear me? So I teamed up with Kenny Lucas in Memphis, and holy crap, how much I learned. He taught me the importance of selling and giving him a hot tag. And him and I went to San Antonio to work for Joe Blanchard. And not only did I get a big push as being his partner there, but when Tully took over the book, Tully gave me a good run as a single wrestler too. It's my first time I won an hour Broadway with Nick Bockwinkel in Hemisphere Arena. I'm going to get back to your question here in a minute because I got to explain all this to get to where we're going.
Yes.
And buddy, I'm telling you, San Antonio was happening too. I mean, it was a small territory, but God, we did good business there. Good business. And I was getting over with them. Well, and in Memphis, they had a tag team named the Fabulous Ones, Steve Kern and Stan Lane. And Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett were business partners in Memphis, but the Fabulous Ones come in, and I don't know. It was a lot of heat between the Fabulous Ones and Jerry Lawler. So Lawler was going to open up his own wrestling in Memphis. And this is true stuff here. So just so happened, Lawler come in to wrestle, I think Scott Casey. Scott Casey was a wrestler in San Antonio. He did the cowboy gimmick. Boy, and he was great too. Loved him. And I got some more stories to tell you here in a minute. Till I get this explained. So so Lawler come in, and Lawler called me in there, and he says, listen to me. I'm thinking about going opposition to Jerry Jarrett. And I want to bring you in and put you with Robert Gibson, because Robert wrestled with his brother. He knew tag team wrestling too. And me, it was an opportunity to go back home. You hear me? I lived in San Antonio, and it's a long way from home, especially when you're 23, 24 years old, and you're trying to make it in this business. So we came back to Memphis, and listen, now we didn't even have a name. You know, you had the Fabulous Ones there, but to make this short though, Lawler and Jerry Jarrett and the Fabulous Ones, they all made up. So he wasn't going up. So now here come Robert and I in there, and we got to play second fiddle to the Fabulous Ones. When they put us together, dude, I'll never forget this. Is because Memphis ran on a Sunday afternoon for some reason that day. We got a new tag team. When they did it on Saturday, a new tag team coming in. They hadn't announced us, and we had to get to the building early at Memphis that day because it was an afternoon show. And Lawler got me and Robert and took us to the flea market out back to buy bandanas. And we just getting stuff. And we didn't even have no clothes. I remember Jerry Lawler had brought a pair of skin-colored tights and a pair of purple ones. And I took the purple ones because when Robert put those skin colors on, he looked like he was naked in them. So, but we were and bought all that stuff. And at the moment, me and Robert just clicked. You know, when you two tag team wrestlers, it just quick. It clicks. And that's how it all started. But now I'm going to jump on another limb here, then come back to what I was saying. See, in our business, you have to learn. But these guys these days, you know, it's your odds of getting hurt in the ring is phenomenal. Listen to me, I'm 68 years old and I still wrestle. But I learned the smart way how to wrestle now. You know, it ain't what you do, it's just how you do it. I was on a show when Scott Casey was going to wrestle Killer Carl Cox. I never forget this. In Austin, Texas. You had a big show there, and me, I'm wanting to learn. And I heard all these great stories about Killer Carl Cox, so I wanted to watch this. So I think I was on like second match or something, and Kent Lucas was, or maybe third. So I took me a shower and I went to set to watch his match. He didn't have music back then. He just went to the ring. So Scott Casey, even though he's a champion, he went to the ring first. And there's no Killer Carl Cox. There's no Killer Carl Cox. He ain't come to the ring. This is when I learned about our business is more than taking a backdrop over the top rope to the floor, okay? No Killer Carl Cox. Referee gets out, runs to the back, comes back to the ring, still no Killer Carl Cox. Then all of a sudden, the doors fly open. Here he comes running to the ring. He gets in the ring, and everybody's laughing because he's got about 10 foot of toilet paper sticking out of the back of his tights, you know, and he's running around looking for it. He can't find it. And then he finds it. Oh, he gets embarrassed. He jumps out of the ring and runs to the back. Then the doors open up, and he comes out with his head covered like he's embarrassed. And the crowd are losing their mind. His gimmick was crazy, and he talked to Alex, the make-believe guy upstairs. Okay? Now I'm watching this. So they get ready to start the match off, and he stops the match, and he looks up, and he starts talking to Alex. Yeah, that's going to work. He locks up with Casey. Casey arm drags it. All right. He jumps up, and he looks at Alex. Okay, now this is good. Now this time they lock up. Casey arm drags him and hip tosses. Boy, and he jumps up and he's talking, he's arguing with him, and finally he's mad, he's strutting around. Okay, then finally he goes, okay, this will work. This is gonna work this time. This time they lock up, he arm drags him, hip tosses, and slams it, right?
Oh, man.
Killer Carl jumps up in the middle of the ring, starts doing this. to Alex up there. Listen to me. 15 minutes has done passed by their match. And I'm looking around at the people, and they're absolutely losing their damn mind. And I'm going, it's a lot more to this, buddy. It's a lot more to this show business. And that's what I was telling you now. I'm 68 years old and I still wrestle. It's like Jerry Lynn was at a show I was at gathering in Charlotte maybe a month ago. And I'm wrestling George South. You have all the young kids in our business out there that are doing everything in the world and not selling nothing. You know who George South is?
Yes.
He grabs that mic. I go out and he grabs that. He goes out, and I told him not to start till I get out there because I know how it is. And I told Jerry Lynn, he was sitting there. He was just watching the matches. He was there having a good time. I said, watch this match here. God. We go out, and George on the mic, and I'm here, and I'm doing my thing, and people screaming rock and roll. And George have our match. See, this is what I'm talking about. Jerry Lynn comes back in the dressing room. He looks at me in my eye, and his eyes are just big around. He goes, my God, Ricky. He said, you and George went and you didn't even lock up. He said, I timed it. 14 minutes and 28 seconds before y'all touched each other. And the people were losing their mind the whole time. Now, that's what I'm basing back to Killer Carl Cox, what I learned how to show biz and how to have fun and give. And even though right now, I know I'm 68, but I would not step in the ring unless I could still give the people their money's worth. And another thing I'm around for too is to teach these young kids about our wrestling business. I have a wrestling school, which you told you earlier, and I like to encourage anybody that's out there, even if you've been wrestling for 10 years, listen, there's things I know and things that you don't even have a clue about that I could teach you. So, I mean, just for one day, you don't got to join my school. Just come for one day and let's talk and dig around. And I can show you some great things out of that. But then we was talking about too, Robert and I as becoming the Rock and Roll Express. And when we got caught up in between second fiddle with the Fabulous Ones. And I don't know if you remember this or not. This is when Fitz McMahon started to take over. We started running everywhere. And these guys were offended because they thought that they were coming into the territories. And that's when you had territory days, but Vince was smarter than all of them. He knew. So this is in Memphis, Tennessee. Let's see. Jim Crockett, Vern Gagne, Kansas City, Florida, Atlanta wrestling. Everybody got together to do a big show in Memphis to run against Vince. Okay, I mean, you had every superstar, ex-world champion you could ever imagine. Jim Barnett from Atlanta, that's who I was trying to think of. So they get there and they're having this big show. Like every promoter's got their big guy. They're giving him his punch and his punch. And that night, Robert and I, we wrestled Ken Wayne and Danny Davis. And we put them over in the match because the Fabulous Ones is on the card. You hear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Jerry's getting that push to them. And I never forget this in my life. And this is where it all began, really. They're having a big meeting after the show, and all the promoters are up there talking. Everybody's talking, they're Jim Crockett about their guys. I think we can do it this way, and we'll do it this way. And Eddie Graham just stood up. He says, hold on for a minute, guys. Listen, I'm listening to all y'all talk. Just be quiet. He says, I don't know about y'all, but I watched this boy over here, his tag team. He didn't know who our tag team was. I watched him sell for 20 minutes, never buried his partner, and got beat in the match, and they was just as good as before. And he says, I don't know what y'all thinking about. He said, but if you want to draw, you need to push people like them because they're new. They're not the same thing that you've been pushing down everybody's throat forever. You need to push them. Well, right after that, I walked outside and Bill Watts walked up to me. And he says, listen, I'm retiring from wrestling. And I got Bill Dundee coming in as my booker. But my booker don't work, listen, for you can't push yourself. Do you understand what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, yep.
If you're the booker and you can't wrestle, so you can't
Exactly.
push yourself. You got to get it. It was the same thing. It was all new because you got to understand it was still the same thing. You know, your baby face. I think when we went to Louisiana, I think Abdullah, the butcher, was a top baby face. And the reason why is because, Bill Watts didn't know he retired yet. Bill Watts just beat him in the blow off. Okay. So they got to turn Abdullah babyface when the next heel comes in to wrestle Bill Watts. He has to beat Abdullah the Butcher. Then Abdullah will leave and go somewhere else. So we get there, and it's just they run videos. I love Memphis because they make videos on you. And they ran our videos for about 4 weeks. And same thing that we did in NWA, but it was Crusher Khrushchev and Nikolai Volkov instead of Ivan that we did in NWA. We come in, the All-American Kids against the Russians. We beat them for the belt. And then in comes Jimmy Cornette with the Midnight Express. We hadn't even been around them, but Jimmy Cornette is every interview, every time, he's the only express that's in the Louisiana area. You see what I'm saying? The Midnight Express, and actually the business picked up real big. It picked up real big. But when we wrestled that first match against the Midnight Express, this is what I was saying to you earlier. We went from National Guard armories to big high schools to college auditoriums to the superplexes to the Superdome. All right. And the unbelievable, I think, and I'm not going to say Bill Dundee was really good because Bill Dundee did all the stuff we did in Memphis, but he did it with us and Jimmy Cornette, scaffold matches and all this stuff. He's the one that invented that. And then, and Jimmy, he had more heat, him and the Midnight Express did. And when we shot our first angle where they did something to me, well, the first thing I did was it was his birthday. And he was celebrating his birthday on live TV. The Midnight Express are walking around him, and I run out and push his face in the cake. Okay. Unbelievable. And then when we shot the angle with us, I mean, that's really the rest is history until we went to NWA. Now, Dusty Rhodes, he learned all his stuff from Eddie Graham, which I was just talking to you about earlier. He knew how to recognize wrestlers. And that's what I'm saying. When Eddie Graham said that meeting, it meant that's when Bill Watts came and got us. But Ric Flair, the real world champion, there would never be another one like him before. And the reason I'm going to say this, and I go, come back, I'm jumping limbs everywhere because it makes it all make sense of what I'm talking about. I got to, we're in the Superdome and we wrestling. We shot an angle that time with Ted DiBiase, and Dr. Steve Williams. Sure was. We're in the Superdome. Muhammad Ali's there. Greatest man ever met, for a matter of fact. People ask me all the time, who's the greatest person that you ever met being in wrestling? I said, Muhammad Ali. Unbelievable. And how he made you feel in his presence, and how you could feel that his presence, but it made you
Yes.
greatest thing in the world. But Dusty run all his stuff from Eddie Graham. Now, when we went into North Carolina, smartest thing in the world. You know, we first night in, we wrestled Ivan Koloff, Crusher Crucial, for the NWA World Title. Dusty, a smart guy.
Yeah,
they done beat every tag team that you could even imagine before we come in. And Dusty, him and Magnum were tag team partners, and they beat them too. The Russians did. And then we come in and beat them on TV. And it wasn't just all of us. Dusty was a smart guy. He had the greatest,
the best minds,
time, the greatest wrestling talent ever in this world. Gosh almighty.
His passing still is just so sad. You know, his presence is missed.
But see, this is what, you know, and I hadn't had my time. I know I'm 68. I'm not a stooge. I don't go up and I don't go hang out with people, be their best friends. If you want me, you want me. But I learned everything I learned from Dusty Rhodes. All the angles we did in NWA, I went to the office every Monday, just me. And Dusty wouldn't, but Dusty told me, he said, it's being a booker, I have things in my mind that I want done for this match to get over. And a lot of boys don't understand that. He goes, Ricky, you do. Went from a long, thing. So, I mean, I sit down and study, and I make him, when I went out and did this angle on TV, it was exactly the way Dusty wanted it. And that's what made the heat good, what made the baby faces good, and all this stuff. And it was unbelievable. I mean, Charlotte Coliseum, they went from running shows, but twice on Saturday and Sunday, unbelievable stuff. The Richmonds, the North Forks, the Charlottes, the Columbia, South Carolina, the Greenwood, all these are selling
all
out
over the place.
Night. Yeah. Do you hear what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
Every night, and buddy, it got so big that nobody could handle it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, you're constantly traveling from town to town, city to city, and you're entertaining people, and you're putting a smile on people's faces, and you're loving what you do. That's the important thing. And the career that you've had, it's rewarding, and that's one of the things we want to talk about on our show is, with your School of Morton, you're giving it back to the community and paying it forward.
Yeah, but before we get to that, if you don't mind, and remind me of this, where I got my PhD in wrestling is, Magnum TA, they were grooming him to put the world title on him. He was going to be the next world champion. And it's a hard act to follow Ric Flair. That's what I was going to tell you earlier. Rick was the greatest world champion ever because he gave the people their money's worth. And if you wrestled Rick, either you went 45 minutes or an hour time limit. He gave the people their money's every night. But see, now they're fixed to put the world belt on it. Magnum has a car wreck, paralyzed, and they don't know what to do. And for some reason, I don't know what the reason's for. I had a single match with somebody. And when I come through the curtain, Jimmy Crockett, Ric Flair both grabbed me, and Dusty. They said, how would you like to wrestle Rick? Have an angle with Ric Flair? Well, how you like to be Christmas every day? I loved it. It's the hardest I ever worked in my life. I did an angle with Rick, and then we broke all records that they ever had there. You can just unbelievable. I went 17 days straight, hour time limits, and that's two times on Saturday and Sunday, plus doing TV earlier that morning. So when that was over, we did hour and a half for about a week, and then I beat him, to get it going. But that was my greatest thing in the world, was to have that run with Rick, because Rick made me understand. I'll tell you how good of a wrestler he is, but he made me understand what the wrestling business is about, how to give the people their money's worth. And that's what's happening today. That's the reason GCW and all of them are doing good business. It's because they give what the people pay to see, they give it to them when they come to see it. And it's really unbelievable. But I was wrestling Rick in Philadelphia one night, and it's a hill town, buddy. They hate you. Then people don't even like ice cream there. I'm telling you, they hate. You're a baby face. They hate you. So, and listen, this is what a good wrestler. I had a guy one time tell me, he says, "I'm wrestling you tonight, but the people out there might cheer for me." I looked at him. I says, "If they cheer for you, it's because you want them to, not because you don't want them to." And this is where I'm going to with this. I'm wrestling Rick there, buddy, and now come out of that curtain, buddy, I was everything in the world but Ricky Morton. Throwing stuff at me. I ain't kidding you, buddy. Booing so loud. All of a sudden, here Ric Flair's music hits, and these people are losing their damn mind. Anybody out there that's listening to what I'm saying right now, you listen to it well. This is what makes you and what breaks you. Because we're in a business. We get in the ring, and these people are all for Flair, and Flair's doing this cocky stuff. 10 minutes into that match, we're supposed to go out with that night. 10 minutes into that match, Rick has done turned half the people. You hear me?
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes in that match, he done turned the whole building. And I mean, people, I'm suddenly hitting people with my elbows, coming through the ropes, trying to get to Rick. They pushed the guardrails all the way up to the ring. People was right there. Arn Anderson came down because, buddy, he seen what was happening. Finally, Rick told me, said, "Listen, I'm going to throw you over the top rope, but land on the apron and go up the top turnbuckle." See, over the top rope was a DQ. He says, "And just run up that top turnbuckle. That way everybody be looking at me instead of him." He slid out of the ring, and him and Arn went out the front door because they were going to kill it. And everybody here, do you listen to what I'm saying to you? This is what our business is about. This is why it's learned now. We're going back into that question you asked me earlier about the School of Morton. This is all the stuff that I teach that people don't understand. This is what I teach at my school. How to go out there, how to be a heel, how to be a baby face. And it's so easy. I don't like, you watch wrestling. Here's a guy, kicks a guy in the face 10 times in the turnbuckle. In real life, all you needed was that one. And see, to me, a guy did that to me one night, and I'm not saying who, and I just looked at him. I says, "Which one you want me to sell, the first one or the last one? Or the one in between?" I said, "You done kicked me 10 times in my head. I should be dead right now." So, because you're not giving the people the believable thing.
You teach psychology.
Yes, you do. You understand? I can sell one punch better than I can 5.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me do it. And that's what's missing in our wrestling business. And at the School of Morton, that's what I teach you.
Yeah, I mean, you get a good education. You learn so much about wrestling, why things are important, why you do the way you do the things you do. And
Yeah.
Was there a particular moment where you decided, hey, I want to do this?
What selling?
No,
Or
develop a
teaching?
wrestling school. Yeah, teach.
Well, buddy, I'm like I'm saying, I'm still very active in this business. And on the independent circuit, you don't, you never get nobody that knows how to work. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're all horrible. But then every now and then you get somebody that has great potential, and I tell them to come and see me. I have a new school that's opening up pretty soon at the end of the month. And my school's no joke. It's not just about me. For my girls, I've hired Kinsey Page, the women's world heavyweight champion, the NWA, to train with my girls. I have a lot of other guys that come in. I have EC3 that comes in a lot. I have myself that comes in a lot. I have a lot of guests that come in from those days to make you stop and understand what my business is about. It's, I watch matches. Damn, they don't even lock up no more. You understand what I'm saying? They start a match off throwing punches. See, I teach you how to tell a story before you even ball up your fist. You hear me? And I do that a lot. I'll make people watch me have a match. I watch them. I'll tell a story before I even ball up my fist. And then I'm going to tell 3 more stories before I ever hit him with my fist. I wrestled a guy the night that was, 6'7". Here I am, an old man. But see, I had to tell a story to outsmart him for the people to believe in my match. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I just can't go to the match and do this guy. 6'7". He's a big guy. Boom, like he's doing this. You say, I tell the story at first how big and bad he is. And then I start outsmarting him. You see? Now, when you start outsmarting him, then he has to cheat to get you down. That's what makes you a heel. And then I don't beat him. I let him beat himself. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I let him beat himself. And that's how our business works. And this is what we are lacking out on the independent circuits. Tag team wrestling. I watch tag team. I watch, on all the big boys. Just little things that I could show them that would blow their mind in tag team wrestling. And the most important thing is to make you understand that it's not me. You have a partner. You got 2 of y'all in there. And the other side does too. So when you have your match, it's not just me. You got to, not like first guy starts off and gets all his shit in. Then the second guy comes in, gets all his shit in. And then the heels, he'll come in and get all his shit in. Then the other heel will come in and get all their shit in. I hate that. Do you understand me? I absolutely hate it.
You have a very sharp mind for the business, and I think that it's important to teach the fundamentals to future generations of wrestlers so that they get psychology, they get they understand why it is that this is important, so that they know how to do it. And
yes,
so
it is, buddy. If I can make you believe, this is how I used to wrestle, especially when I was wrestling Ole and Arn. God, but let me tell you how great they were. I'm like, I was at the time in the business that when I was young, I was wrestling guys that were better than me. You see what I'm saying? And they made me the greatest, I think, but when I'm wrestling Ole and Arn at the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, I had to make these fans know that I'm wrestling 2 monsters from the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. They're going to break my arm. They're going to kill me. And they're working my arm and hurting me. And I'm watching the guy on the front row, and he's going crazy. He thinks Ole is breaking my arm and killing me. And I'm thinking to myself, wonder what that guy up there in that balcony thinks. Oh, he's going nuts too. But then it comes in where Arn come in, and I'm selling, and Arn will go, my nickname's Punky. And Arn will go, Punky, are you okay? Not did I have the guy on the front row believing it, and the guy on the balcony, Arn Anderson, believed I was hurt too. And I looked up at him and I said, shut up. You understand me?
Yes.
That's what we're lacking in our world today. And listen to me. Some of these moves you see on TV are tremendous. Some of these moves you see on there, I don't know how they even do it. But if you put it in a storyline, and if you put something like in that, where you tell a story about all this, it'll make it so much better.
Now, you've done a lot of charity work, I know, throughout your time in the business,
Yes.
especially with running your own school. What kinds of things do you do outside of wrestling to help out in your community?
Well, we do all kinds of shows around here, gathering, just to help sick people or to help somebody to help them with the funerals and help them with the kind of work like that. But now this is what I want to tell you. Another thing about my school is I had a kid come to my school one day. He had he's cerebral palsy. You hear me?
Mm-hmm.
This arm and this leg is, short or another, and he wants to join my school. Mama was behind it going, no, 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 no. But see, he's being bullied at school. He won't go to school. He's making straight L's. And I looked at him and I told him, I says, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you go back to school, I would take my time with you and I would teach you my wrestling business. This is the kind of stuff that I do, okay? I want you to listen to this.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make this short.
Yeah.
During that time, he went back to school. We worked out, he lost 80 pounds. This arm and this leg smaller, I covered it up and learned to walk. If I didn't tell you that he had it, you wouldn't even know it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Most important thing I teach you is don't be afraid to be afraid. Getting up in front of people and talking and speaking. Well, he went back to his high school and he got into the drama classes. Okay. He went from making F's to the valedictorian. Okay. He got a 4-year scholarship to ETSU and acted. And now he lives in Miami. He's an actor. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, see how it changed? And it was just about, but that's the kind of stuff I do. And doing my charity work around here. Oh, it's just to help whatever organization that needs my help around here, I'd come and do it. Mm-hmm. We need to raise money for this and that. We do a lot of stuff. We know Bristol's big in NASCAR. And, in the NASCAR put on a lot of programs that I just go and show up at. And a lot of times they don't even ask me. I just come and show up, and it works out. We're in a small town here where everybody. Everybody lives amongst everybody. There ain't no this and that. Mm-hmm. But I love it here, and thank you again.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, buddy. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Well, this has been great, Ricky. I just want to say thank you again. It means a lot to me and to my listeners that are listening to this and watching this on YouTube. Have I met you before? We haven't, but I'm planning on going to conventions. I'm going to be at WrestleCade in November, so if you want to, you're there. Yeah, I definitely will. We'll absolutely meet.
I'm doing a seminar on that Friday. At Tracy's place.
Very cool.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Take care.
Bye, buddy.
Bye-bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.